Sideshow panel. I'm going to try and move quickly because I know we're already past time. Okay, so Sideshow's been around for 30 years. I'd like to start by going back 30 years in time. A lot has happened since 1994. Sideshow predates Google. We predate the first Frappuccino, Starbucks, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all that social media. We predate the first Harry Potter book. I mean, it's 30 years is a very long time. And this is what we all look like 30 years ago. My name's Anna. I'm head of business development at Sideshow. That leads the wonderfully talented creative team as a liaison to our studio partners, Disney, Warner Brothers, Dynamite Comics, Coffin Comics, to help usher the lovely creative vision of our sculptors and painters and project managers from their imaginations into collectible reality. Can we go down the line and you guys all introduce yourselves?
Sure. Can you hear me? My name is Anthony Messes. I'm a project manager at Sideshow Collectibles. Next month will be my 20th year with Sideshow.
Hi, I'm Bernardo Escobar. I'm senior painter at Sideshow, and I've been there for, what, 18, 19 years? Yeah, 19 years.
Painter at Sideshow. Next month marks my 10th year, actually.
Will Carvalho, I'm a sculptor at Sideshow, and 2 months will be my 10th year.
Awesome. So we're going to go through Marvel, DC, Star Wars, and our originals. We're going to go back in time, kind of talk about a little bit where things began, look at a few of our greatest hits, get some sneak peeks into the future. The art team will be talking about some of these projects and what has changed over the last 30 years. We're going to be giving away some products throughout the panel, so I hope you're all up to date on your historical nerd trivia. And then hopefully we'll have some time for some Q&A at the end. I've got 3 archetypes books here and some silver pens for the art staff to sign. Hopefully we'll have time for 3 questions. Again, I'll try and keep an eye on the clock here. So let's start with Star Wars. We first got our Lucasfilm license back in 2004. What you see here is our first premium format figure with Luke Skywalker. A year later, in 2005, we started our 6-scale line, again with Luke, you can see here, kind of posed in an environment. A lot has happened since then. Some of our greatest hits, Grogu, the Child, a life-size figure, is one of our best-selling figures of all time, just back from 2020. Anthony, do you want to talk a little bit about what makes Grogu so special and so unique?
Yeah, this one, I mean, with Mandalorian was in the process of being made. We have a relationship with Legacy Studios where we were doing a lot of work with them, and I'm sure a lot of people know Legacy is kind of a spin-off from Stan Winston's studio. They have a heavy hand in doing all the effects for some of the Star Wars shows, and they were definitely involved big time with Mandalorian. So since we had a relationship with them, we got the chance to work with them, and they created Grogu. So they were the ones that sculpted it, did all the hair work, did paint and molding and casting and everything. So when we went into development with this, we had the ability to basically take exactly what was seen on the screen and go into production with that. We also had them do the paint work on it. They prototyped everything, punched hair, and so it didn't get any more authentic than what we were doing with Legacy for this piece, which definitely shows and paid off at the end.
So a little bit of trivia. We do have one of our life-size childs here to give away. Quick show of hands. Who can tell us how old Grogu was in Mandalorian Season 1? I think you have been correct. Up here, our Vader Mythos figure, another one of our best-selling pieces of all time. Our Mythos line is kind of from the imaginings of Sideshow in collaboration with Lucasfilm of things that could have been, but maybe never were. Anthony, do you want to talk a little bit about what makes this piece in particular so unique?
Yeah, I mean, like Anna said, you know, if you're familiar with our Mythos line, this is a line where we've taken characters that are mainstays in pop culture, and we kind of put our own twist on it. We fill it in where it's like, what could have been or what if, something that maybe might not have been seen on screen or in a comic book, but something that everybody's kind of imagined, like, oh, I bet you this is what could have been or should have been or whatever. So we've had the opportunity to kind of go that route and add our own spin. And with Darth Vader, he's such a force, no pun intended, in you know, Star Wars mythos or mythology and canon, that, you know, you never really see him in full rage or anything until like some of the recent movies, you know. But we always felt like, you know, what would it be like if he was really, you know, PO'd and just, you know, going full rage, like the ability to go out there and do what everybody's always imagined him doing or being in battlefield. What would he be like? And that was kind of where this stemmed from. And we had 3 different heads with a damaged head. We also said, you know, what if even his lightsaber was, you know, super quote unquote raged up, so he has kind of a flaming, his saber's so hot that it's, you know, creating licks of flame off of it. And he also has his robotic legs. So these were things that were never seen anywhere in the movies or in comics, and it gave us a great opportunity to kind of show all of that. And Bernardo painted the piece too, so which he could, I'm sure, elaborate a little bit on that.
Actually, Bernie, we're going to move on to a couple sneak peeks, and I think my first question relates to the Vader Mythos piece too, but what you're seeing here is a sneak peek of our upcoming Captain Rex premium format figure. A lot of our figures, especially in Star Wars, there's a lot of explosions and flames. As we all know, those are chemical reactions that are constantly in motion, but you're painting a static collectible. How do you achieve those smoke and fire and explosive effects to kind of give that sense of motion in something that's static?
Well, first and foremost for me, reference. So I like to look at reference, real world reference or comic book reference. And it also depends on what the piece, if we casted it, it might be a clear resin or it could be solid. So from there I go on and basing it in light colors, you know, really bright, and then layering on top of that. And then going with the motion of like, oh, you know, here's a really hot part of it if it's an explosion. So, you know, make it bright white, and then, you know, going with yellows and oranges. So it's just basically layering with transparents, or it can be opaque, but trying to get it as hot as possible. And then intention of the piece. If it's a comic book piece, we want it really bright. But also too, if it's gonna be realistic, you know, go that route and kind of marry the two. You know, if I'm looking at comics or animation or something like that, and see how it flows. It's always going back and forth, so.
And even just to jump in a bit on that, in painting elements, when you paint like a physical piece, you're always doing highlights and shadows. And when you're painting anything elemental like flame or clouds or anything like that, they really, especially flames, they're not casting hard shadows or anything, so that's somewhat of a challenge.
Yeah.
You have to really kind of think about it differently when you're painting those types of things. And you know, if it becomes too clear, sometimes or glossy, it looks kind of candy-like. You know, so there's a very fine line that you have to tread on, not just paint, but on the sheen and stuff. So
it's always going back and forth in any book, right? Because sometimes we might finish it this way. It's like, yeah, you know what? Let's tone it down, and we'll either flatten it or gloss it. Yeah, you know. So.
Cool, thank you. And then the next sneak peek we have here is of our Obi-Wan Mythos premium format figure, which is currently in paint.
yes.
Bernie, can you tell us a little about some of the challenges of a lot of characters change over time, having been in business for 30 years. We all know different characters are reprised by different actors at different point in the character's life. Obi-Wan is a great example of that. So you've got 2 different likenesses, 2 different actors, really at like 2 different life stages as well, but they have to work with the same body. What are some of the tips and tricks that you can employ so that both those heads are really cohesive within the final piece?
Yeah, so first and foremost, we all know, you know, the great Alec Guinness portraying Obi-Wan. And then Ewan McGregor doing a great footsteps. So basically, I wanted to get Alec Guinness first and get all his nuances and age spots, because he's a little older, but also bringing his hair not so gray, but a little bit add more brown into it. So he's a little bit younger looking per se. And then McGregor was adding a little bit more gray, but also a little bit more. He's younger and he's newer in the desert, so there's a little bit more of a sunburn. I did a treatment to his face a little bit in some spots, on the cheeks and on the nose and whatnot. So, and then bringing in a little bit more gray into his brown hair, so it kind of starts to bring them together in time. But yeah, it was challenging, but great to do that piece because, as you know, this is like one of the third iterations of the Mythos. If years ago when we did our first Mythos Obi-Wan, and it was almost the same thing, but now it's even.
And I think the beauty of it is that because it's a Mythos piece, you don't have to, follow the exact reference. You're looking for somewhere in between, so you have the ability to have some artistic interpretation. So it doesn't make it so stressful.
Right.
Sometimes.
Yeah. No pressure, but.
Moving along in the Wayback Machine. In 2005, we started our partnership with Marvel, and y'all may have noticed Anthony commenting on some of the paint. He actually joined Sideshow as a painter, and this Green Goblin here is the first piece he painted for Sideshow. These are our first two Marvel pieces from 2005, Logan and Green Goblin. I believe these had an internal armature proposed to. They were polystone, like our current collectibles.
Yeah, the first one did it, but some of I think the Logan, if I remember right, had a bendable. I'm not sure, that one I wasn't on so much, but some of the earlier ones, even before that, had a softer body. So when we were working on our premium format line, and doing cut and sew and actual fabric, the bodies weren't solid resin bodies. They were almost like a soft, kind of like a plush body with a wire armature, which allowed us to bend figures and kind of make them somewhat posable without ball joints. So they were almost like a stop motion armature, but it just had like an aluminum type of armature, so you can kind of really pose them and manipulate them in a piece. And then it evolved into some of the hard body with just costuming on it. But yeah.
Speaking of resin and hard bodies and a large sculpting, our greatest hit with Marvel by far was Thanos on Throne. Will sculpted this wonderful piece. It, I think, broke the internet, or at least our website for certain. Will, can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges of sculpting a piece this big? If you've ever seen it in person, it is the size of a toddler. It's gargantuan.
When it first came in, we were joking, like, my daughter is here now, 13, but at the time I think she was like 6 or whatever, and he was bigger than her. The challenges actually were interesting because we wanted to be very faithful to the comic book. But comic books, the panel of a Thanos and he'll be this big. And so there's not a lot of detail. We needed to add all that because we had this much real estate. I mean, his leg was this big, his thigh was that big. So we couldn't keep it strictly like the comic book where, it's just a big balloon hot dog. So we had to fill in all those gaps, and that's the trick. There was a lot of design in there, and a lot of time we did many iterations of his costuming, the texture on his suit, the patterning on his suit, and all that kind of stuff. So really, the design was the most challenging part of that. We actually didn't know what the movie version was going to look like. They sort of coincided when they hit the audience, but we didn't know, so we were just out there on our own designing what we thought a movie or a modern Thanos would look like based on the comics. But it was a lot of fun.
So we don't have a Thanos on Throne with us, but I do have 8 Annas, are designed by Joe De La Gata. Quick show of hands, who knows what year was Thanos' first appearance in the comics? Anyone? Take a guess?
68?
Later. Earlier, sorry. Oh, when orange? Yes.
Oh, nice.
Moving along, we have a couple sneak peeks of some upcoming projects. You'll see here on your left is our Rogue and Gambit diorama. I love this piece. It's one of my personal favorites that we have. Up and coming. Kat here painted it. I'm hoping you can tell us a little bit about some of the challenges of painting dioramas. When you have two characters and they're interacting with each other, there's differences of light interplay. There's some technical challenges. What are some of those challenges and how do you deal with them?
And it's just two figures. I mean, you spend a lot of time working on the portrait, but now suddenly you have two completely different portraits, and in this one in particular, they have to interact. They're looking at each other, looking at each other's eyes, and so technically this one was difficult because it's so many pieces, so many parts that touch. Because I don't know how much, if you guys have seen some of the behind-the-scenes videos, but that could be 70 parts. I don't count them, but so the legs are separate, the body is separate, and so trying to, before even painting it, I have to set it up so I can put the whole thing together, put pins in there so it holds together without just hopes and dreams holding it together. As you put it together, and then it's a matter of really, you have the heads on there and trying to figure out, you're kind of looking like, I think this is where his head is, and trying to kind of pencil in the eyes and stuff. So it's challenging. It's the eye direction, but then ultimately on something like this one where they're touching in so many places, their hair is touching, he's holding her arm, she's pressed up on him and her thigh and the chest, and so it's just getting all that to work when you're trying to glue it together. You have to really know which part to glue first, because if you glue the wrong part first, now the whole thing won't go together. It can be frustrating. There were times. Yeah, basically.
We also have a sneak peek of Mystique, which I don't know, it's upcoming, that was co-designed and sculpted by Will. One of the really cool things about this piece, obviously Mystique is a character who can transform, not often shown in collectible format transforming, and there's a couple different ways that movie special effects have tackled this. I think the team did an amazing job of interpreting the art, and we have some really cool, unique swap out pieces. I mean, if you want just straight up Mystique goodness, we have a version of her in there too, but I like her transforming. It ties really well. There's some cool storytelling in this piece. Relates to, I shouldn't give too much away. But Will, can you talk a little bit about how you sculpted the transforming elements here? You can see kind of the seam line in her sleeve and her pant leg.
I'm not sure which picture we got here, but we knew we wanted something different. Mystique hasn't been depicted in statue form very often in mid-transformation. So I don't know what you can see there, but she's half one thing and then half herself. And so the real trick there was we wanted the customer to be able to have both versions. So whatever transformation was going on had to be carefully controlled so that all of that part would come off, and then the plain, straight Mystique could be swapped in. But as far as the transformation itself goes, I worked closely with Richard Wong, one of our designers, very talented, and he's a master at effects. Whether it's lightning or smoke or fire or whatever, he really, when I did Gambit, the whole pink card throwing energy, I just traced what he gave me. So this was another case where he really laid it out for me, and I could just follow interpret what he gave. So, but that was fun, very fun piece to work on. I can't wait for you guys to see the whole thing.
We have one more Marvel piece to give away. We have our 6-scale Gambit here. Show of hands, who knows who's the first artist to draw a Gambit? Like the artist, creator, artist, it's a writer-artist combination.
John Romita Jr.? No. Jimmy?
Yes. Jimmy. Moving along in our timeline, our most recent major studio partnership was with Warner Brothers, obviously most well known for DC Comics, although they have a whole host of wonderful other film franchises that we have some collectibles here in 2011 is our first DC figures. We have a Wonder Woman and a Joker. Love that Joker. Kat painted this Wonder Woman, and she actually painted our most recent Wonder Woman too. What has changed since in the world of paint since this Wonder Woman and now our current premium format figure?
So early on, when we would paint skin, it was pretty straightforward, a base color with some highlights and shadows and stuff. But since then, we've all been sort of working on the techniques of trying to make that skin look more lifelike. So it's, because if you're just airbrushing the highlights and shadows, they tend to look a little forced and a little statue-like. And so we've been really trying to bring more realism to it. And so now we'll use washes and sponges and some stippling with the airbrush to really give that sense of depth to the skin. And another big difference from that Wonder Woman to our newer Wonder Woman is we tend to paint in on all our statues to a different degree a light direction. For the most part, on just most statues, it just sort of helps inform where your highlights and shadows go instead of just like all the high points or the light. This way, you know, I always kind of like to go from an angle in the front, and that just helps, remarkably, it just helps give a three-dimensional statue more depth. But then we also have pieces where we exaggerate that a little bit more. So you might see some pieces, like a Psylocke piece a few years back, where the lighting is more nighttime. So the whole piece has a cooler sense to the skin, to all the elements, and the trick there really is, you know, mentally making that like, okay, this is supposed to be red, but at night it's a little bit cooler and a little more muted. What does that do to the color? And this is on every element of the piece, because you really want that light direction, that atmospheric color that you're trying to achieve to really be seen throughout the piece, not just in a few elements here and there. And so I think that's some of the, paint-wise, those are some of the biggest changes that we've seen in the last 10 to 30 years.
Awesome. Moving on to some greatest hits from the DC verse, some more recent figures, but we have our Zatanna premium format and Batman versus Joker. Starting with Zatanna, I mean, this piece has some really amazing engineering in it. You can see her from the photo, she's kind of on a floating platform. Will, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the sculpting and the technical elements that went into achieving this magical effect of her floating in the air like this?
Well, to tie it back to Thanos a bit, whereas Thanos one of the great challenges was the design side of it. For Zatanna, as soon as I saw Richard's drawing of that thing, I knew I wanted to sculpt that. I mean, I put my name on that thing right away because it was such a clever, awesome idea and way to depict her power, you know, was to have her floating like that. So that's a case where I didn't change a thing. I mean, he gave us everything we needed to do, and I just followed verbatim. I mean, it was really a fun piece to work on because I just had to get out of the way and sculpt it. And as far as engineering goes, we've really gotten good at pushing the boundaries of what is possible. It started off with Martin's Spider-Man, who's, if any of you've seen it, he's balancing on one arm with his body cantilevered off the side, and we got that to work. And since then, we did the robe where she's completely floating by her hand. So this one was challenging, but right in keeping with what we're really, really good at now.
I love the mirror in that face too, it really
Yeah.
adds to the magic.
Yeah.
Moving on to Batman versus Joker, this was an incredibly complex piece that's been very well received. It's got two main sculptors, Titans, Martin Canali, Danny Bell, Jorge also lent some support there. Two different paint direction. There's a lot going on in the piece, both compositionally and storytelling, but also behind the scenes. But we have one painter, and that was Bernie. Bernie, how did you take all that paint direction, all these different sculpts from different sculptors of different styles, and just the insane amount of things going on in this piece, and unify it so it all felt cohesive?
Both quarter scale, by the way.
What's that?
Yeah.
And then two quarter scale
Yeah,
things.
which is like, yeah, usually dioramas are 1/5 scale or 6 scale or something like that, or smaller. I really don't remember because, geez, that took a lot of my life away from me. Crazy.
It was all
No,
blurred.
and he was project manager.
I was
So
with him.
it was nice to work with him because we've been working together for such a long time, and with Martin and Daniel. So if there's a video that's out there where it's a round table of us speaking about it, and it was so great to talk about it because, yeah, they're both different sculptors. One's a Batman fanatic, and the other one loved the Joker, so that was easy. And so then getting these two to marry together, and just the what we call it, the energy that's going through that piece of them falling down, and making sure one was painted, but the other one had to match that one, and desaturate it, and just making sure everything was cohesive. Getting the energy to show through that piece was, first of all, I think an engineering feat in sculpt, but in paint, it's like layers upon layers of things that I had to think about. The fire, where it's not a hot fire, but a fabric that's on fire, and then the clothing, the cards, the beams that are getting all they're broken, and just showing that force, but showing them, and also making sure that there is highlight and shadow, but making sure that since it's a 360 piece, we had to go back and forth, and it was really cool. At the same time, it was nerve-wracking because I had to paint two, mind you. So that's like, I don't know how many pieces was on there. All I know there's a lot of cards. There are a lot of cards on there, and chattering teeth. But yeah.
I think Bernie's painted a bajillion Jokers and Batmans throughout his career at Sideshow. So it was just finding how do you merge these two and keeping with the style. Luckily, Batman and Joker's color palette doesn't change too crazy, but it's just getting that whole highlight and shadow.
Right, and it's the finite stuff, like Joker's face, his eyes were red, and making sure, we got to get him on there on something that has so many things going on.
Yeah.
At the same, a lot of Easter eggs too,
Yeah,
which
there's
I
a
can't
lot-
say,
there's a
but
lot
they're
to
in
it.
there.
But it's a very visually busy piece, which the paint is going to get, is that much more. It just kind of highlights the sculpture itself.
Speaking of pieces, that will be a challenge for our paint team. Here's a sneak peek of an upcoming line of collectibles. We're bringing our Mythos imaginations to the DC universe. This is very early concept work. These pieces will, and some of them already have changed a lot from the design stage here. But it's a few sneak peeks of 3 different pieces. Anthony, can you tell us a little bit about what to expect from the DC Mythos line?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're looking at the Harley Joker. So this is going to be a smaller scale diorama, and it's Bonnie and Clyde take on the two. They've always been seen as partners in crime, and side by side creating chaos and reveling in their the stuff that they've robbed, and that's kind of what this scene is going to be like. It evolved from a very literal Bonnie and Clyde. I mean, it still kind of is, where we decided we were going to do them standing in front of like maybe a car, which is the shot-up car like Bonnie and Clyde everybody is familiar with. But then as it evolved, we shifted it to more of their like back at their lair. They just robbed a bank, and the diorama will kind of emulate that whole vibe. And of course, they're passionate about their wrongdoings, and they're in love, so they're hugged up, and they're basically just excited about the whole event. And plus, this one will have fabric cut and sew as well. So we don't do a lot of pieces that have cut and sew that are smaller, other than a 1/6 articulated. But this one's going to be a smaller statue, and this will have cut and sew, so she'll have the dress and
Which looks awesome.
fully suited. Yeah, it's coming out great. We're in the final stages of paint on it, so it'll start popping up soon.
Well, I'm gonna stop you there.
Stop me.
Can't spill all the popcorn in the lobby. We do have one more large piece to give away. We've got a Wonder Woman premium format figure, which is very heavy. There. From a show of hands, who knows Wonder Woman's secret identity?
Prince?
Oh, sorry. I was gonna call on the lady behind you. Sorry. What was it?
He's right.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
He's right. Stay in the front.
Oh, yep. Okay, come on up. original IP, which includes Court of the Dead, some historical figures. But I want to make sure we get to Q&A. So but I do want to highlight, if you're not familiar already with our latest original IP, which is the Pulp Vixens. They're a series of kind of vintage Bond girl badasses, imagined by Mr. Will Harbottle here and sculpted by him as well, and painted by Kat. One of the wonderful things about working on original IP is we can really be unfettered in our designs and our techniques, and we've got a little more budget on the business side too, since we're not paying a studio royalty, and so we can put that money into experimenting and doing some really unique premium features in some of our statues. Will and Kat, can you talk a little bit about some of the really cool, weird stuff we've done with these?
Yeah, we had some fun. We knew, as you say, we knew we wanted to, I've said before, this was our love letter to the medium. We all live, breathe statues, and statues of pulp culture things. So we love this stuff. So we wanted to put everything we could possibly think of into these pieces, and original, and push the envelope as much as we could. And one of the things in the Mr. Sin piece, it's got a lithophane in it. A lithophane is the thickness that it's produced in. If you hold it up to a light, it looks three-dimensional. If you've seen these things before, that it almost has a holographic effect. It's really cool. So we've never done anything like that before, but we did it in this one. And so there's a contained piece in the top with the
fake and a little light behind it.
with a light behind it, and it lights up, and it looks really, really cool. So, but that took a ton of experimentation.
Yeah.
I mean, it took a lot of experimentation to just do it in 3D, and then the paint, forget about it. We had no idea how difficult it would be, because normally they're just black and white. You're just looking for the depth, but we wanted it to look really, really cool with the light off, when it's not being lit. So it had to be painted, fully painted, and that's where you came in.
It was fun, because I mean, you have to be, that's one of those where you have to be really aware of the actual sculpture itself, because you don't want too much paint getting into all those cracks and crevices, because now you're obscuring the effect. So it was a lot of airbrushing, which is going to give you a more even coat of color, and some dry brushing, which is just going to put the color on the surface. But yeah, it took a few tries to figure out, is the texture on the front, is it on the back, how does it look lit up, and yeah, so there was some fun R&D on that one.
Even in production, it took 10
that-
rounds of
that's-
production to
but
get
that's-
right. But
I just saw pictures,
yeah,
and it's
it was
coming out awesome. And both of these are a good example of where we've pushed the color and the light to really give you more of an atmosphere and a feeling, a set of the scene. Like, so Mr. Sin, she's lit from kind of some candles sort of down and below, so she's sort of uplit, and that's why she's very warm. It's in a dark cave, so all you have is this candlelight. So her skin tone is a lot warmer. Her hair, it affects all the colors going all the way up, but then also you have the light from the cave and the lithophane, and how that affects the like sort of foreshortened stairs kind of coming down in the background. And then in Deep Down, we wanted it to really feel like she's deep down in the ocean, underwater, and so everything is as you get down to the bottom of the piece, it's all cooler. It's a lot more blues, but then you still want her and her face to be lit up, so that's got a little bit more natural color to it.
Thank you. All right, we've got one more sneak peek for you all. This is all concept art from an upcoming original horror line that we're working on. I won't say too much about it, but Anthony, can you talk maybe a little bit of why Sideshow is so drawn to horror?
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who are familiar with Sideshow, I mean, we cut our teeth on horror, Universal Monsters, and so that's always been a big passion for a lot of the original people, our creative director, Tom Gill, and myself. So that's always been a mainstay. So now we've gone and taken it from a licensed aspect into exploring some tropes of horror that we'd want to do, like vampires and witches and all the creepy characters that that have always been a mainstay of horror. And we have some really cool pieces coming up. Like I said, there's a vampire piece. I'll let you guys figure out what's what here. You know, there's a vampire piece, and there's
Those are fingers in her belt.
and a demon, and what do we have else there? Oh yeah, and of course the witch. So, and you know, we've been able to play with it and have, you know, some of them have a sexier take, a very artistic vibe going on, where we've really been able to explore some things that, you know, you don't necessarily see in existing properties. So yeah, there's some fun pieces. So yeah, we've been involved in sculpting some of those as well.
Okay, I think we timed this out just right. Just quickly, if you are interested in anything you've seen here today, we've got a QR code for our coming soon pages where you can sign up, and we'll email you if you're interested in hearing more as those pieces develop. We also have an exclusive discount code for you all for 30% off anything on our website. Thank you for coming to our panel. And I think we have time for 2 or 3 questions if anyone has one. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm more of a Cisco figure collector than statues, and I don't understand your business, but do you think Sideshow will eventually start distributing a company called InArt? They're like the new kid on the block, and their sculpts are amazing, and I can tell you Hot Toys is no longer top of the food chain. They're really good. So, is there any plans to bring them in? Because the stuff's amazing.
That's interesting. I'll make a note and check it out. My partner Connie kind of runs the distribution side of our business. So we're both a maker and a distributor, which is where our partnership with Hot Toys comes from. But we believe the rising tide raises all ships, and we try to distribute as many other, you know, quality makers that we're able to partner with. So I'll check them out. Thank you for the suggestion.
And we're fans, so we're well aware.
Yeah.
We're well aware of our stuff.
You know about it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're Queen Studios, so
You've seen that?
that's their.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's some of us have even ordered for our own personal collection. So yeah, they do awesome work.
They're part of Queen?
Queen Studios.
Oh, okay.
But they're
So this is what they-
Yeah.
For the painters, I also do model painting. How do you guys emphasize like the focal points of a sculpt to like actually show what you want to be seen instead of like background? Like I don't know, I don't have to phrase that right, but
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, it's a lot of balancing the color and the contrast, light and shadow. So, I mean, like something like the Batman and Joker, there's so much going on. It's how you have to really make sure that the faces, because the face is always the first thing that everybody looks at. You want to make sure that that's the focal point. That's got some of your brightest colors, and so it's not just a matter of focusing on that one area that you want to be like the first thing that people see, but making sure that everything around it is a little bit more subdued. It doesn't really take away from that part that you really want to catch somebody's eye. So, you know, it's with color, with, you know, the fake lighting and contrasting your colors too. I mean,
Yeah,
so-
because I mean, we set up the piece, so the intention of the sculpt is this is how we want them to basically set it up in their display. So then we go from there, and that's where we put the light source on it, and then we go from there and make sure that everything's balanced. You know, kind of like a comic book, you know. I mean, you wanna think of everything where the light is hitting it, like how she said. So that's always, it's kind of difficult, but it is easy.
It's thinking of it almost as a theatrical way, like in a movie. I mean, when directors or whatever want to create action, you know, and the lights are dim here or whatever. So if you're doing your own personal work, the sky's the limit on what you want to be emphasized. So if you want to think of it in that frame of mind, then, you know, like Kat said and Bernardo, using colors and subduing shadows, you might not want to paint as detailed somewhere else and kind of pop the details, you know, whether it's on the face or an explosion or whatever it may be.
You want a quick tip? What you're gonna have painting, take a picture of it and look at the photo, and then you can see where you might want the light to.
oh, that's smart. Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
I was just wondering if when you were growing up, you ever thought you'd have such an incredibly, fantastically cool job, like ever. This is unbelievable.
When I saw Star Wars in '77, I was 7 years old, so do the math. When I saw that changed my life.
Me
on
too.
How I saw movies.
It was City and Star
And
Wars.
it's really weird how I said, when I saw that, I told my brother, I go, one day, I gotta have to do something with Star Wars. I don't know what it's gonna be, but this fell into my lap, and I can't believe I still pinch myself
Every day.
every time
So cool.
I go to work and I'm able to work with
I
the
don't-
licenses that.
I don't paint any Star Wars figures because
And me, it was just growing up, being a kid, loving monsters and dinosaurs. And, you know, my grandmother was more than happy to, you know, open the TV guide and tell me when the movies were gonna be on, and we'd sit there and watch them, and then I'd started building the old Aurora models, Dungeons and Dragons figures, stalled out during high school, and then got into garage kits, like resin garage kits from Japan and stuff, and just, it was my hobby, and my hobby ended up, thank God, turned into a career, because I don't know what I'd be doing if it wasn't.
It is a niche though, we did fall into a niche.
Yeah, I count my blessings, yeah.
Thank you.
Have you ever heard of LED filaments? Because in like lightsabers now, they can light up instead of just being a translucent plastic.
Yeah.
just wait.
We've been doing a lot more of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of, with the advent of LEDs and how cheap they've gotten, and with the incandescent lights getting banned, with filaments, everything's had to switch to LED. So even like when you see Edison bulbs and stuff out like at Home Depot or anything, they look like they have the filament. They're actually flexible silicone LEDs inside of there. So once the prices drop, now you start seeing them in everything, which is kind of inevitably finding its way into the collector market.
Our stuff was shown lately, right? Ghost Rider?
Ghost Rider.
Ghost Rider is probably the first one where we have because before you couldn't really bend those lights, or you were having to contend with the wires, and that's why a lot of times you didn't see those in lightsabers, because if you put them in a saber, you'd have to have one lead down here, and then you'd have to have the lead on the other end, and you always had a wire that came up, which was, depending on how picky you were about a saber, some people like the wire, and some people didn't. So it's always we've been kind of experimenting with various things,
And it's pretty cool to see, believe me, I've walked by a production room a couple of times, I'm like, lightsabers, like can we, like, you know, so.
it's
just,
doable, but
yeah.
it's finding a way to do it in production, because a lot of customizers will do it, but
Yeah.
they're spending huge amounts of money customizing and putting neon tubes into stuff, and it's like something going to
Production-wise, it's difficult.
That's not cost effective, and if it breaks,
Yeah.
you can't replace it, and then the customer's out of luck, you know, so. But with LEDs, what you're mentioning, there's a lot of possibilities that are starting to pop up.
You in the back of the mess.
So, in a world where there's no licensing problem, like what would be your ideal character or like licensing to work with? Like if I could
That's a
be
lot.
Kate, make this, what would it be?
I don't know, you guys.
I've done most.
Start over there.
I've been really lucky so far. I'd like to work on James Bond movies, but.
Pretty cool. So Disney's really particular about what they will and won't allow as a three-dimensional sculpture, even though it's in their animation. And so I've always wanted to do the new Mickey shorts, the redesign of the Mickey shorts. There's some where like Goofy is a full-on zombie with like bones and stuff. And there's just some of those that are they're so cute but ghoulish, because like the creator also used to work on Ren and Stimpy, which is awesome. So I'd love to do those.
And you would think they're Disney things, you would think
No,
they would let you just go ahead and do it. I think that's the weird thing with licensing, you know, it's like, some people just assume that if somebody has a character under their license, then it should be no problem. But there's these micro split ups within the license that are like, no, they're not gonna let you, but.
I would say Howling PF, let's do the Howling, can we do that? The Howling?
I'll look into that. I would add Vertigo to that list. I mean, I grew up reading comic books, and I love a lot of those titles, and especially like Neil Gaiman's Sandman, and unfortunately there's a lot of like legal history that tends to tie up these properties. That's my side of the business, that stuff just has to remain inactive, and it's a shame. A lot of times too with popular entertainment, we can't get likeness rights, those are separate, and it's great that the artists have the rights, but if we can't track them down, we can't do the figure. And heartbreaking.
I think throughout the years, though, at least on my end, we've done a little bit of everything that I wanted to do. It might not be. I still think there's room for some of the licenses, you know, whether it's Universal Monsters, where we could revisit and ramp them up compared to what we did, you know, 20, 30 years ago. But I think we've kind of touched on all the stuff that I'm into. I'm sure after this, I'll be like, oh, that's the one I didn't. Blade Runner. Yes, there you go.
You in the back? Yeah.
I was just wondering if you guys are gonna attend San Diego this year.
I knew this question was coming. We will not be going to San Diego this year, unfortunately. I think we all love that show. Yeah, many years.
19 years from me, yeah.
We love you too.
And I think we all personally miss it.
Blame COVID.
Yeah. But I think things shifted over time, and we feel like we can provide more and do more from our studio and the setup that we have there.
I have a question for everybody except Anthony because he owns everything. But what do you personally collect?
Hot toys and some of the PFs, the Star Wars stuff. So
I like original art, like comic book art is really dear to me.
I like my character. I like my Zatanna, I like my Kitty Pryde. I'm a cherry picker.
Anthony's still looking for.
I don't know if it's collectibles. You're right. I have everything. I'd focus on, you know, like classic muscle cars or old school cars or something, but that's way out of my. Stick with my jalopy truck.
Yes, sir.
Piggyback on what this lady said, I hear a lot of talk about Star Wars and Marvel, DC, and like across the board, statues and figures. I just see like it gets a little repetitive with those three properties. I feel like there's more to life than just that. I mean, like, has everyone ever thought about doing Mad Max? It's like so many characters you can do from that, whether it's statues or, you know, or even the 80s, 90s.
You're talking to the. Yeah, you're preaching to the choir right there. But you know, once again, it becomes a licensing issue, and some of these big name properties that everybody feels like, why aren't they doing that? Usually it boils down to we cannot.
It's impossible.
We can't get the license to it.
But we're doing a lot. The next year is going to blow people's minds.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
doing
Yeah.
so much new, different stuff in the next year. Stay tuned.
yeah.
And we've been working with some exciting new partners too. I don't know if you've ever heard of Critical Role, but it's an amazing show. It's really fun. It's great storytelling. We have a line of statues with them that I'm really fond of, and I'm excited to see where they build their worlds too.
I don't think we're not trying. Yeah, I don't think we're not trying to constantly chisel away at the licenses. Going, how about now? How about now?
We're always in
this
there,
now?
right?
Can we
Just
do
'cause
this?
we're fans ourselves, so you know there's stuff we want.
I'd love to have a Blade Runner piece or Mad Max
or
or
a thing.
yeah, and, you know, yeah, any of those pieces.
All right, I think we.
Which character would you consider your Grail character? The one you always wanted to do?
It was Deja Doris, and I got to do that.
No.
Oh man.
What was that one?
Deja Doris
Oh,
by Deja Doris.
Yeah, the next one, right? Yeah.
I think the design team is sick of me suggesting Squirrel Girl over.
I would say a Luke Skywalker in X-Wing or something like that. You know, like an iconic, one of the ones, the heroes that I love from Star Wars. But there is one Grail piece that I do have that I've always loved doing. No pressure, but it was Clint Eastwood, Blondie, and Harry Callahan from Dirty Harry. So when I painted those, he did come into the studio, and just to have him there was like, man, it was amazing. I wasn't there, but
It was so amazing that he wasn't there.
I wish I was.
Feeling it.
I was actually at
That's
Disneyland, but to have him there in studio and how he appreciated the artist, it going full circle, because I was a kid watching those movies, and for me, it's like, oh my gosh, here's an iconic, a hero, a role model, whatever you want to look at him, but he was just such a great man from what I heard walking down the hallways and talking to him. that,
He was there for like 3 hours.
Yeah,
It was
so
insane.
for me, I have the prototype head sitting at my desk and, being able to have that, to do that piece for him was amazing.
Clint Eastwood gave some of the best creative feedback I think we've ever received when we were looking at designs. We had a Dirty Harry figure when he was walking in the street, and Clint's feedback was just, a man plants his feet. We were like, okay. Like taken there. That's funny. I think we have time for one more question, if there are any.
I know you've done some limited work with Warhammer. I don't want to ask too much, but is there any plans to expand that further? I know there's been some stuff, but is there any? Is that going to continue at all? Or? Yeah.
So one of our owners and our chief creative officer is a huge Warhammer fan, and so we always watch what they do with admiration. We've had a few conversations with them. I think they have their world pretty well covered, but you never know. All right. Well, I think we're at time. I've got 4 books up here and a couple of pens. I'm going to give 1 book to each of the artists, so if you want to come up, I'll let them give away these 4 books and pass them around the side as well. And we have 2 pens too, so you'll have to grab both that. Maybe we can move that into the hallway so the next panel can come in. Thank you all so much.